Hi, this is Unit 3 and it is Section 3.08, The Ups and Downs of the Economy, Number 1. The economy is always moving. Economic players routinely win and lose on deals in the global marketplace. But from among all this seemingly wild economic activity, discernible patterns emerge. Learn about some of the features that appear over time in an economic system. You will also learn about specialization and the standard of living and how inflation affects us all. One pattern that becomes clear from observing economic activity is that the quality of people's lives tend to improve over time. Most people live longer and have healthier lives than their ancestors did. Some of this can be explained by the evolution of human ingenuity. But the market also plays an important role in improving people's lives. In a free market economy, ups and downs are part of a regular cycle. At any given time, some people are up while others are down. During some periods of time, the economy booms and many people have good jobs and can afford the many goods and services offered by producers. At other times, the economy goes bust. People lose their jobs and the economy slows down. This natural cycle makes the economy seem like a pretty rough game, especially to those who are on the losing side. Still, there are some ways in which nearly everyone benefits in a free market economy. One way to see how people benefit is to examine the standard of living. The standard of living is a measure of an entire population's overall ability to afford goods and services. As everyone knows, money cannot buy happiness, but in the game of economics, the best way to measure general prosperity is through the standard of living. Increasing the standard of living. The standard of living takes into account the availability of goods and services to the average consumer in an economy. An increase in the standard of living usually occurs in two ways: when prices fall as people's income remains level, or when incomes rise and prices stay the same. If income goes up while prices go up, then people cannot really buy more goods and services. If prices fall but so do incomes, then consumers cannot buy more than they could before. The best way to improve the standard of living is to increase productivity. That gives labor more value because it can produce more, and at the same time goods become less expensive because it takes less input to produce them. Put another way, increasing productivity leads to greater supply. Not only does greater supply reduce prices, it gives more consumers availability to goods and services. When more people have access to things such as cars and televisions and healthcare, either because prices are lower or because there is more to go around, the standard of living increases. Competition. One key factor that can increase productivity and result in an improved standard of living is competition. Competition increases productivity because it drives people to work harder and faster, pushes people to improve their skills and knowledge, encourages finding new and better ways of doing things, eliminates unproductive or inefficient competitors. Why competition works. You have already learned about some of the benefits of competition. If a system is competitive, productivity will usually increase. Competition means that success is rewarded, so productive workers get promotions or higher pay, and productive systems receive the most resources. These rewards act as incentives that inspire workers to be more efficient and thus more productive. Because productivity is rewarded, competition for those rewards leads to higher productivity and a higher standard of living. Competition can be hard on workers with few abilities or little opportunity to improve skills. That is why education and training are so important in a competitive, free market system. It's a jungle out there. People compete for jobs and salaries, and that inspires them to improve their skills and work harder. Businesses are also in competition with each other for market share. If their share of the sales in a market was set in stone, they would not have to create new and better products in order to succeed. They would just keep doing the same old thing and productivity would never improve. In a competitive market, however, new companies regularly challenge old ways of doing things in the hopes of capturing a share of the market. This competition pushes established companies to adopt new methods. If they do not increase their own productivity, they will lose their share of the market. Specialization. Another way to improve productivity and raise the standard of living is through specialization. Specialization is a method of production that focuses on a specific, narrowly defined task or set of tasks. It helps producers emphasize a limited scope of products or services in order to increase productivity. Specialization is a simple concept based on the simple realization that it is easier to do one thing than it is to do many things. Specialization eliminates energy wasted trying to produce a wide variety of different things. The assembly line is an example of how specialization works to improve productivity. Since workers on the assembly line are each responsible for a single task, they can do it very efficiently. Instead of having to learn, remember, and perfect many different skills, workers who specialize can focus and improve more easily. Trade. Competition and specialization increase productivity, but they are not enough to do the job alone. Both competition and specialization require trade in order to work. If people did not exchange goods with various trading partners, there would be no competition. And without this kind of exchange, people couldn't specialize. Trade also allows resources and factors of production to go from one place to another where they're needed most. Trade allows nations to sell more of the goods than it can produce more cheaply than other countries. For instance, coffee grows very easily in Brazil and Jamaica because of the local climate. These countries can grow coffee cheaply, and because of trade, they can sell their coffee in other countries. This trade leads to increased competition around the world, and the increased competition provides other coffee growers with an incentive to increase productivity. This trade helps bring down coffee prices so that more people can afford to buy more coffee, and that increases the standard of living. Trade and markets. Trade has several useful functions in addition to aiding competition and specialization. Trade among different people creates new markets and can diversify the goods available to consumers. Consider Saudi Arabia. With very few resources other than oil, the country cannot produce all the goods and services its peoples want or need. But since other countries need oil, Saudi Arabia can trade oil for those other goods. Oil producers in Saudi Arabia have become very rich from this trade, and this has allowed them to buy all kinds of things that are not produced in their country. They would not have been able to do this without the international market for their oil or the ability to buy everything else through international trade. Keeping a lid on trade. Trade brings many important benefits, but there are drawbacks as well. When consumers buy low-cost goods from another country, they may be costing jobs in their own country. The next time you go shopping, check to see how many of the products you buy are made in the United States. Many products we buy are made in other countries because they can be sold at lower prices. But are those low prices worth the job losses in the United States? Does the ability to buy a greater variety of goods at a lower cost increase the standard of living for consumers? Advocates of free trade would say yes to both questions, but there are others who do not think such trade-offs are worth it. To serve and protect. Some critics of free trade advocate protectionist policies to protect a country's economy against foreign competition. One way to protect a country's economy from low-cost foreign goods is to charge a tariff. Tariffs make imports more expensive than non-tax goods, and this, in turn, reduces their attraction to consumers. A well-placed tariff can aid domestic producers by making their goods cost less than foreign goods and can sometimes reduce international competition to nothing. Another protectionist policy is the subsidy given to support locally produced goods. This subsidy is another method that enables domestic producers to charge less and therefore get more business. Tariffs and other subsidies can reduce the amount of trade that takes place. This has an effect on other economies, as well as on the economy of the country practicing protectionism. A world of productivity. Whether or not the benefits of free trade outweigh the harms, the balance has tipped greatly in favor of fewer restrictions on global trade over the past 60 years. Competition and specialization have also increased during recent decades, leading to a highly productive global economy and an overall increase in the world's standard of living. And you can go ahead and do the competition, specialize, and trade, drag and drop on your own. From the perspective of an individual person, the ups and downs of the economy feel like a roller coaster. Sometimes jobs are plentiful and the economy thrives, but at other times unemployment rises and things seem to slow down. The price of gasoline goes up and then it comes down. Housing prices rise and fall. To individual economic players, all these ups and downs can seem very random, but from a larger perspective, a pattern emerges. This pattern is called the business cycle. The business cycle is similar to the cycles of weather. The outside temperature gets warmer or colder depending on the season, but the day-to-day weather can vary quite a bit. In much the same way, the economy heats up or cools down based on changes in the business cycle. The business cycle involves a series of fluctuations in output, consumption, and growth. It has ups and downs and twists and turns that do not necessarily follow a simple pattern, but this pattern has a big effect on everyone's life. Inflation. One of the most important aspects of the business cycle is inflation. Remember that inflation is a general rise in prices over time. Economists and the government measure inflation by calculating the inflation rate, which is the average percentage that prices rise over a given time. Inflation is a constant presence in the economy. As time passes, almost all goods and services become more expensive. But different goods and services grow more expensive at different speeds. Inflation can be slow for some items and quite fast for others. The inflation rate measures the speed, indicating how well people's incomes can keep up with the rising prices. As long as rising inflation is accompanied by rising wages, the rise in prices creates relatively few problems because consumers have enough money to meet the rising prices. Slow, steady inflation follows this pattern. In fact, this type of inflation is a sign of a healthy economy, but not all inflation follows this healthy pattern. Too much inflation can become hyperinflation. During a period of hyperinflation, prices rise very quickly, spiraling out of control as things get far too expensive for wages to keep up. Too little inflation causes stagnation. Stagnation is a lack of growth in the economy. Lost jobs and wage cuts are common during a period of stagnation. Finally, there's a condition called stagflation. Stagflation is a combination of the words stagnation and inflation. During a period of stagflation, wages are falling while prices are rising. Stagflation is very hard on the average working person.